party, isn't it? Grab a whore and have a good time.
So, welcome to the latest episode of Topical Philosophical Society. Let me just say, tonight we're talking about Anita Sarkeesian's latest Tropes versus Women video. So tonight it's going to be a party. So grab a whore and have a good time.
But everyone, be assured that by whore he meant actually a whore. Right? He actually meant. Oh wait, no. He was being. It was a metaphor. It was a deep metaphor. He didn't actually mean grab a whore. Well, I don't know what to say about this, but one thing that I guess interested me in the video was her statement that representation does not equal critique. I don't know, that took me aback a little bit, and I can say why, but I'm kind of interested in what did you think? I guess my immediate response to her would be something like this. What about like Francisco Goya? He's a famous Spanish painter from I think the 1600s, right? I mean, he did a series of kind of prints about a war that was going on then, and he titled them "The Disasters of War." And he showed the Spanish men and women being basically slaughtered and destroyed in this, basically he felt, meaningless struggle. And I felt like that was as much of a critique that he was able to give, and he gave it pretty forcefully. I mean, if you look at some of those pictures, they're pretty moving. And I love Francisco Goya, he's one of my favorite painters. So that was my immediate response. What do you two think? I mean, immediately I kind of just jumped to this.
Yeah, doesn't it depend so heavily on the context surrounding the representation? I mean, well, I don't know. It was her point that there just wasn't enough like bad context around the representation to make it sufficiently be a critique, because it seems to me that a representation can be a critique, just like you said.
I don't know, because it seems like she was wanting something like, if you remember in video 3 of Damsels in Distress, as she talked about how just, the joke of being at the woman, being on the, just go back and watch shit, but her whole point was it's not simply enough to show things as ridiculous. So, or in this case, as in our own words, it's not enough to show misery as miserable and exploitedness as exploitative. You have to actually do some sort of work to subvert it. And I might say that perhaps in your artist's example, the subversion could have worked because people were unaware of what exactly war meant. And whereas some representations, like the ones she's critiquing in this video, we know what we're looking at.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, this is kind of where I wanted to take this discussion. I mean, like, I kind of want to say, well, this is going to sound nitpicky, but I don't think it is. Representation can be critique. First of all, it's a matter of what medium you're using. I really feel like she has this kind of book perspective that she forces on everything, and that's just my personal opinion. She's got this book background to her, and I say, well, there's other kinds of medium, right? I mean, and then the context that surrounds that. So I mean, like, I guess she should be really careful with language here. I mean, the best thing she could say is like, a representation can be critique, but usually it's not very good critique. Right. I mean, that's what you should say about these video game moments, right? I mean, I get what she's saying. I totally get it. Like, she's saying that these scenes, that are painted in these video games, are basically just kind of contextless, almost meaningless little acts of violence that appear out of nowhere. You have no context to put them, to fit them into your kind of mind about what they meant or what the pain meant, and it just kind of appears and disappears ever so flippantly, right? I mean, that's her point, isn't it? I get it. I know what she's saying. Isn't that what you? Don't you think that's what she's saying? I mean, like exactly is where does these? They don't provide you with any way to fit this into your structure of the world.
Yeah, it's just thrown in there sometimes. I mean, you can come at it and look at it as something that looks terrible, and you think it's terrible as you approach it. But I mean, I think her critique has got to be something along the lines of, I mean, the game doesn't do enough to frame it as bad to consist of a critique.
Right. I mean, like again, I don't. I kind of want to resist that. I want to say it is a critique. It's just a really bad one. It's just a really, really bad one. I mean, like, because like what she says is true. I mean, if you look up rape statistics and crime statistics, most of these things are done by people that you know, people that are close. They're not done outside. They're done inside. I mean, there's plenty of these stats you can look up. And the point is, like, yeah, I mean, maybe if I were her and I were to make a video that was interesting as opposed to hers, I would say, you know, how about something if I said this, like, the treatment of violence and sexual assault is very flippant, right, and presents an absurd violent solution to a problem that doesn't really exist, which would be, I don't know, naked men trying to rape you on a hill in GTA 5. I mean, like, that would be what I'd say, is that it stands up there as trying to say something. It is trying to say something, right? It's just not very good.
I mean, at some level, I just gonna have to come down and say, I mean, is it even trying to suggest a solution?
No.
I mean, at some level, it's just kind of say, wouldn't it be awesome if you could, like, totally mow those guys down? That would be awesome. I mean, and in a way, I mean, sure. I mean, you're right. That's no way to tackle the real problem as it exists. But, I mean, there is that aspect to it, and it can't be ignored. That the game is saying, well, wouldn't it be cool to mow down these guys who violate women? Go for it. Go ahead and just shoot them up. Kill them. It's going to be great. And you have fun killing them. And that's the end of it. I mean, and there's no deep critique of anything. It's in there for a moment of exhilaration, a moment of revenge. You take it out on the bad guys, and then it's done.
Right, and I think that's exactly what I kind of want to say, too, is that, like, look, I mean, what's really going on here is it's violence portrayed as entertainment.
Yeah.
This is violence as entertainment, and she doesn't like this.
Yeah.
This is the core of the issue, I think.
I totally agree. This is what we kind of have to focus more and more on, the fact that this violence is used as entertainment, and, you know, she wants to kind of suggest, you know, that could have some bad effects. I don't know where she wants to go with that. Beyond saying that there's possible negative effects of presenting violence as entertaining.
I mean, again, welcome to, like, 50 years ago or something. Like, wow, violence is a form of entertainment. Like, you know, you're kidding, really? I mean, this is what's been going on in movies for decades now. But I mean, okay, if I were to hold up her mantle for a little bit, and, you know, because this is one of the very few interesting points in a very dull video, you know, I guess. But this is the thing. Maybe she would say, well, when violence is entertaining, very little is learned, right? Okay, and I want to say to her, yeah, that's right. You're totally right. When violence is entertaining, nothing is really learned about it. It's the same thing with news. When you present news as entertaining, which is what these news programs do these days. Now, they don't make news. They make these entertaining personality talk shows that are more about the people than actually about what the news events are, and then it becomes this cult of personality. This, by the way, has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I mean, yeah, you're right. But then what happens when the game creator says, well, of course not. I wasn't trying to teach you anything.
Yeah, what if I were to kind of spin this on its head and say that representations, yeah, they can be critiques. They can be neutral, but they can also be damaging if they're too far from truth. What if I were to say, granted, I'm not entirely sure if I believe this as I say it, but that by making sexual violence into something that only these kind of, as she said, the mustache twirling cartoon villains, when Mr. Grab a whore and have a good time, find evil laugh. By making it into something that only these bad people do, it makes it harder to see the actual subtleties of the issue. So it kind of paints over them with this big brush of media sensationalism.
I mean, exactly. This is where I would have went too. If I were to again take up the mantle against myself here, I'd say like, yeah, right. What happens then if watching all this entertaining violence gets these people into the mindset that now they therefore know something about violence, right? They know what's going on out there. Okay, well, again, yes, this is something that you could even claim as specialization, even kind of a contextless kind of knowledge that has really nothing to do with reality, right? I mean, like if you see violence painted this way, you might actually begin to believe that you actually know something about it, whereas it's just a poorly framed and poorly written scenario about a problem that doesn't exist, like I said before. I don't know. And I guess, like, the response, and I get that. I totally get that point, because, and if anyone actually wants to read a really interesting discussion about this, read this book. This book is excellent. And this is where kind of, like, Neil Potzman kind of really comes back to me, is like, I don't know. The thing is, I would say that if I want to counter that point again, I'd say, well, look, we go to television now for education, right? I mean, television has become a medium that we accept as educational. And to put it bluntly, games are not seen in that light yet. I mean, they're not taken with that level of gravity and seriousness.
Why so serious?
Let's just be totally blunt about it. They're just, I mean, the way the society see games now is just they're a bunch of toys for man-childs to sit around and play with. Now, I'm a gamer, right, and I don't like that. But does society take games as a serious critique and commentary about society? No, I don't think so. At least not to the level that she's suggesting they do. They don't have the air of seriousness that, for example, even this guy has, and he's not serious at all, right? He's a con man that's trying to sell you snake oil.
No. Hey, shut up. No, you had your 35 minutes. Shut up.
But even he is taken, like, there's an air of seriousness about what he's doing that's not there in games, in these fictional worlds. And that's the only thing that I kind of feel like I have to say about that.
I mean, doesn't it boil down to, I mean, if there is something, I mean, it just boils down to kind of a media literacy that needs to be necessary. If one is like a teenage kid and he's playing these games and he's really thinking he's learning something about the world, I mean, he needs a little media literacy. I mean, there is the existing problem in society of abuse in society that needs to be addressed, but I think the core thing would be just for him to sit down and, learn that this is as much as he might be thinking that violence, even these weird displays of violence could teach him something. It isn't at all. It's just mindless representations of really fun stuff sometimes.
Very poor representations.
Yeah.
Sorry to keep interrupting, Jesse. I know I should let you get in, but I just want to say, like, yeah, exactly that. I mean, this is how I feel totally, that media literacy is necessary. And, I mean, that's kind of why these games have a rating system. I mean, you're not supposed to be allowed to play these games until you have, hopefully, if our school system wasn't failing and a factory that generated, like, mindless idiots that didn't know how to connect knowledge together. But anyway, that's a side topic. Hopefully by that time they had actually been educated in life and hopefully a kind of philosophy and knowledge about the world, so that they would know this, right? That they would have the sufficient moral and educational background to know that this is just silly fun. Jesse, I'm sorry, I keep on interrupting. You want to add anything, or should we cut off here?
Yeah, I think probably we should wrap up part one of this discussion. We'll have another their exciting discussion on a thought-provoking topic in part 2. We look forward to seeing you there.